Right, hello, everyone. Welcome to RJ Julia. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Jackie. I'm your event host this evening, and I have the great pleasure of introducing our lovely guests tonight. We have Hannah McKinnon in conversation with RJ Julia's own Emily Wakeman Cyr. A little bit about them before we get started. Emily is one of RJ Julia's event specialists. So while you may have seen her running around running some of our events, we are so excited to have her in the chair this evening moderating this conversation. Emily is an author whose short fiction appeared in the B-Zine, and her first novel, Pleasant Day, was released in 2023. So you'll see we have that available at the registers. So we encourage you to check it out. Support our lovely book, lovely event specialist here. Hannah is the author of several novels, some including Message in the Sand, Sailing Lessons, The Deep from Here, and The Darlings. Here to celebrate her newest novel tonight, The Summer Club, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. This is about a group of outsiders threatening the status quo at an exclusive New England beach club. This has been described as the star of the summer and a juicy, unputdownable read, which is arguably my favorite kind of book to read. Definitely want to get your hands on this one and head to the beach this weekend. So we will have time for Q&A as well as a sign line after the event. So if you haven't had a chance to get your copy, we have this book and a lot of your backstock available at the registers. So feel free to check that out. And without further ado, I'll hand it over. Enjoy.
Thank you. All right, so first of all, congratulations on the release of your book. Just came out on Tuesday, for those who don't know, so big week. We're glad that you made one of your first steps with us here at RJ Julia. I love RJ. And I'm very excited. As Jackie said, I'm one of the event hosts here, so it's exciting for me to be in the chair as an author, putting on my author hat tonight. So I'm going to grill you a little bit on your new book and on your writing. So first of all, you're known for your writing for adults, specifically beach reads or women's fiction, but you started your career as a writer of young adult fiction. So can you tell us a little bit about kind of how you got your start with publishing and your journey and what led you ultimately to here, the Summer Club?
It's a very good question. I used to be an elementary school teacher for 10 years. I taught in several school systems in Connecticut, in Ridgefield, in Fairfield, and in Southport. And I was immersed in children's lit. And my favorite part of the day, every day, was read aloud. And I specialized in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, but mostly in 4th grade. And we were reading Kate DiCamillo, who a lot of you probably know. Her first book, I think it was actually her second, Because of Winn-Dixie, which has since been made into a fabulous film. And I just remember reading that book to my 10-year-olds and looking up, and everybody was silent. Like every chapter I read, even the loudest kids were quiet. And the time of day that we read every day was right before lunch recess. And so when that bell went off, these kids, I mean, they're growing, they're bored, they're hot, they want out of this prison room of a classroom. They go, they can't wait to the cafeteria, the playground. And as I was reading this book, everybody stayed in their seats. And I remember one day, one of the boys who hated to read, had a lot of trouble with reading himself. He was like, please keep going, just one more page. And the bell went long. And I just remember thinking, I had always written, and I'd written since Mrs. Meyer's class when I was a 3rd grader and I was 8 years old. And I just remember thinking, like, this is what it's all about. I love the power that children's literature had on my kids and how it made me feel. So I was pregnant at the time. My first daughter, Gracie, is here somewhere with a stack of books. I went home and I gave birth to her, and I was on maternity leave. And my husband said, well, you have 4 months. You've always wanted to write a book. Why don't you try to do that now?
No pressure or anything.
No pressure. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do that, because I had been working on manuscripts and sending things out for a long time. And I wrote 2 YA books during that time. Well, she napped when I wasn't nursing, and I should have been sleeping or showering or brushing my teeth. And I sent them out, and I had been doing picture books for years and years and years and have been rejected for years and years and years. And these two came together and we got an offer with Macmillan, and I never went back to teaching. I was writing ever since.
Wow.
And the way I ended up getting into more commercial adult fiction was I had published 2 books, Franny Parker and the Properties of Water, and I wrote a third. And I always thought, oh, I'm published now. I'm done. Like, I'm gonna be published forever. And I realized getting published is really, really hard. Staying published is just as hard. And I sent out a third book and we're like, no, it's not edgy enough. We're shifting away from wholesome middle grade fiction. You know, we need more romance, we need more edginess, we want kids with more issues. And while I appreciated that, it just wasn't what I was producing. And I was watching a segment on NBC Today Show one morning, and there was a story about a sled dog named Isabel who was blind. It was during the Olympics. And I thought, oh my gosh, I would love to write that book for kids. And I ended up emailing the family in Manitoba, Canada. I don't know what I was thinking. I was pregnant again and very sleep deprived. And I developed a relationship with this family living in Churchill, Manitoba, which is the polar bear capital of the world. And we emailed back and forth, and they had so many offers of people to write their story after this segment on NBC. And I got a call back 6 months later, and it was the wife of the musher who ran the dog sled yard. And she said, Gerald wants to meet you, but more importantly, we want you to meet Isabel, who was their sled dog. And she's like, you have rescue dogs, you have Alaskan Malamutes. She said, we just feel like you understand us and everybody else is big Hollywood business or big New York business. So they flew to Manhattan and I met with them and their agent, and I had to quickly find a talent agent. And then a month later, they flew me up to Manitoba and I spent the summer in a dog sled yard doing research. Unfortunately, that book never published because they had a business falling out with their partner. And despite all of our heart and effort and work and what really ended up being a fabulous book, the rights were in contention and their lawyers got involved and the whole thing blew up. So I have this great dog sled book sitting in our home. We're still in touch. We still send Christmas cards. But that was such an important lesson for me in rejection and the business end of things and research and again, picking yourself up and dusting yourself off and trying again. So at that point, I thought, okay, I have a middle grade book in one desk drawer and a dog sled book in another desk drawer. And I'd always wanted to do adult fiction. So I thought, what do I have to lose? Everyone has said no to everything since these first 2 books that won so many awards and were so well received. And I thought, oh, just forget it. I'm going to write something. And then that turned into The Lake Season and Mystic Summer. And we did a 2-book deal with Simon & Schuster. So as far as publishing goes, you know, you're in the industry. It's always evolving. It's always challenging. And I think just keep writing, keep going. It's the one thing I've really learned, which is my very long-winded. It's really
Well, it's been a long and winding road,
it's
right?
been a long journey. Yes.
And I was also a teacher, so
Right. We talked about that.
I feel like
Yeah.
that is a common path, it seems. I feel like I've talked to a lot of
Yeah.
writers who started out that way.
Isn't that
So
so funny?
I think it's
There
like
are a lot of
the
us.
passion for writing kind of lends itself to that journey, but it's interesting. I feel
It
like
is.
There are a lot of writers who start as teachers.
Yeah, I think it serves you well. I think you're constantly aware of your audience.
Right.
And who that target audience is, market wise, as well as just meeting those readers where they're at.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
All right, so in the summer club, and probably most of you have not read it yet since it just came out, but we will soon find out that a common theme woven throughout is this idea of the insider versus
Yes.
the outsider. So we have Ned, one of our point of view characters, is
Yes.
this very down to earth, like salt of the earth sort of guy.
Father, yeah,
You know, didn't grow up with a lot of money, and he ends up finding himself the president of a country club.
right.
And then we have Darcy, who is a teenager, and she's struggling to find her place both within this country club where she's kind of grown up in it, but isn't really a member in the same sense that a lot of the other people are.
So true.
Plus, she's a teenager, so she's also kind of like an outsider within like this social structure of school and of the friend groups.
Yes.
And then we have Flick, who is new to town, so he's kind of an outsider in that sense, and he's also new to the country club. So did you know from the start, as you began this manuscript, that this was a theme that you wanted to explore, or did it kind of evolve throughout the process?
Yeah, it's always hard for me to answer this because I never really can pinpoint where I get inspiration or ideas from. You may have the same experience, but for me, I never belonged to a country club. So growing up, my family belonged to a lake club where we live in Connecticut, which is a beautiful little seasonal rustic oversized mud puddle. And my brothers and I grew up going there. And then when I had children, as one does, you bring your children back to the mud puddle. And there's one of them there in the doorway. She can attest to it. It was just this really wholesome club. We're right on the western border of Connecticut. So it's a mix of, you have screenwriters from New York City who come to the mud puddle. And you have locals who are, contractors and carpenters who are at the mud puddle. And everyone, it's like a big family, but it's a seasonal family. And I always loved the element of looking forward to summer and reuniting with all these people who you wouldn't necessarily see off season. And then my husband, who is an avid golfer, suggested we join a golf club, which is not really in my pay grade, but it's a casual club. It's kind of no frills, and he loves to golf. And I said, okay, we'll do this. So we tried it a few years ago, and the idea for the summer club came because we were members of a club that, although it was no frills, it had hierarchy. And I recognized very early on that you have the chef's crew in the kitchen, you have the golf and tennis pro downstairs, and you have the membership who has their own assortment of characters within it. And it was interesting to me because there was an argument in our first few months of belonging there about the sign on the club. And it is a wonderful club, but it has an old sign that represents a male who looks like a pilgrim. It's a very historic club, very historic area in New York. And the male pilgrim is fully formed and has eyes and a wide brim hat and is staring off at the mountains and looks regal and all-knowing and competent. And behind the male pilgrim are two women. They are faceless, they're wearing bonnets, they're shrouded, they're completely expressionless. And so during one of the board meetings, a discussion came up, shouldn't we modernize this? Like, these women have no face, they have no eyes, they have no voice. And we're a robust female membership. Female membership on the board is higher than the male membership. And a lot of the dads I loved during these discussions spoke up, and they said they felt really uncomfortable having their daughters come and play tennis and learn golf at a club where at the entryway, there are these faceless women on the sign. And other people were outraged. And, the word snowflake and woke and all these other things were thrown around. And there was infighting, and they had to have Zoom meetings, and then they had in-person meetings. And just listening to all of this as a new person in this membership made me realize all the intricacies of belonging and what people will do to belong, and how important it is to some people that things never change. And even if it doesn't work well for everybody else, this is the way it is. It always has been. And don't you suggest altering that? And there were others who were like, we need to modernize. So that's kind of where the whole inspiration came. And then naturally the characters came. I do YA boys for me. I usually have 3 or 4 points of view in my books, but I usually have adults. And I've had 2 novels where I had a teenage narrator. This one has 2. So it may read a little bit young, but I felt that they were so important to have as voices in this particular novel because they're coming of age. And we have a Hispanic boy from Flushing, Queens, New York, who has just been uprooted. His mother, Josie, who is a chambermaid in a hotel in the city near LaGuardia Airport. And they moved to this area, they've married into money, and they're brand new. And Flick, her son, just wants to get a job in the kitchen. And Josie wants to be a member. And so he starts out behind the doors, working in the kitchen, pots and pans, washing dishes, serving people. And then eventually when his family applies for membership, he realizes he's going to be on the other side of that kitchen door on the dining room side if they're accepted. And that's kind of the crux of the story. She wants so badly to belong and give her son a better life. He wants nothing to do with being part of this membership. And he doesn't really fit in either world. He straddles both. And by the same token, there's Darcy, who he meets in the hallway and immediately feels some kind of connection to. And Darcy is Ned, the president of the club's daughter. And Ned loves this club. He has his own childhood history there, which is very complicated and somewhat dark. And he's trying to get the membership going and save the club. And he thinks it's such a great place for his son and daughter to work at. And Darcy hates this club. And Flick can see right away that she does, but he doesn't know why. He knows that there's a reason beyond the obvious, that there's something that has happened to Darcy at the club that her father, is just blind to, and her experiences are not being heard or seen. So for me, it was really getting through the assumptions we all make about people and some of the prejudices that we all have when we just take people at face value and what we're willing to risk to belong to something. Some people will go to pretty desperate measures to belong to things absolutely greater than themselves. Yes.
Absolutely. So this kind of leads into the next question, and that is, and I feel like we might have talked about this a little bit last week too, but people have this misconception that beach reads, books that look like this, are light and frivolous and don't really have that much substance to them. But I think, like we're doing, there are many other authors out there now who are trying to challenge those stereotypes and include things with more substance and depth in their books and try
More
to tackle
grit.
more serious topics and highlight like societal issues within books that look like this.
Yes.
And in your book, I think especially there are a lot of topics that are really important to talk about and to think about. We have the teen characters grappling with things like body image and popularity, experimenting with drinking, the expectations of their parents versus what they want to do with their lives. And the adults are wrestling with things like parenting said teenagers. We have our main character's parents are parenting a neurodivergent teen, which comes with its own issues. And then just navigating the complex dynamics of this community, both the greater community and this smaller community of the country club. So in terms of those specific issues that you highlighted in the book, how did you decide to include those, and were any of them like of particular personal interest to you?
Yeah, I think all of my books deal with families and family experiences, family challenges, coming of age, growing up, reinventing yourself, second chances. Those are themes that I explore typically in a lot of my books. And in this particular one, I wanted to make it a little bit more gritty. I feel like as the mom of two teenagers, it's nothing like it was when we grew up as teenagers, and they have to grapple with so much more these days with social media and societal pressures. And I think they grow up so much faster and they know more sooner and they want to do more sooner. And so that was really important to me to get those two teenage voices down accurately and really make them as authentic and vulnerable and beautiful and raw and still developing as any teenager is, and bring them to life on the page. I think also when it came to Ned's character, the father, I wanted a family man who was very altruistic and had the best of intentions, but who was really torn between his club family and trying to take care of that, and whose romantic blind spots for this place he's so historically tied to, unfortunately, reach into his own family home life without him realizing it. And I think it just makes us all kind of ask questions of ourselves, like, what we might think or see on the surface is not always what is truly going on. And I think, I read a review yesterday. I never read reviews, but this woman sent me something on Instagram and she's like, I'd love to share this. And I looked at it and it was a really nice review, but she said, it's not a beach read. And I feel like I get that comment all the time, and I actually take it as a compliment. I don't think there's anything wrong with beach read. When I first published, the term chicklet was so widely used. I remember Jennifer Weiner railing against chicklet in one of her editorial pieces, and I was like, yes, she's so right about that. Like, there's nothing light about this. Women protagonists, women's issues, women's voices, there's nothing light about it. There's more depth, I believe, to many of those characters and what they have to say than in many other novels I read. So for me, I think it's fine if people want to put a beachy cover on and call it a beach read. I don't take offense to that, but I also love hearing when people say, wow, you guys tackle some really difficult topics and you do delve into some uncomfortable territory. And I wasn't sure where you were going to end up with this. It's not a Hallmark movie ending. As much as we all like that for escapism and boy, do we need it right now. On the other hand, I don't want to present a bow at the end. I have two daughters and I want them to know that life is messy, life is complicated, that you get back up and you keep going, and that these things happen, both good and bad, are all temporary. And we just have to keep on pushing through.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of readers who really appreciate that. I'm sure this group does.
Yeah.
But there are certainly people who want the Hallmark movie book
And
as
that's
well.
great. There are times I need those too. Yeah, definitely.
And also, I feel like a beach read could be any book you read on the beach.
It could be
Like,
any book. It could be a John Grisham novel, right? It could be nonfiction.
Right.
Yeah.
We all have our thing, right?
So true.
So this book features a pretty wide cast of characters. You have
Yeah.
older characters, you have the younger teen characters, and kind of everything in between. You have characters from all walks of life.
Yeah.
Which I think is great because it's really representative of, like, even though you have the exclusive country club, it's still representative of microcosm of society. So which character in the book would you say was the most enjoyable to write, and which was the most challenging?
I am quite enamored with Flick Creevy, the teenage narrator. I had so much fun writing Flick because I have daughters. I don't have any sons, but I have two brothers growing up, and I love his outrage. I love how honest he is. I love what a good person he is, but how he really thinks critically, not just of the people in his environment, but also of decisions people make or how he's going to get himself out of a scrap. I love that he is so new to this area, and he himself comes in with his own biases and prejudices, and he has already decided these are the worst white people in their white building on the hill, and he's sick of their flags. And he gets in there, and one of his favorite characters ends up being Fitzy Babcock, this tiny little woman who teeters around. She's got a monogram silver flask. She has her gin and tonics in it. She offers him a sip all the time when no one's looking. And Fitzy really cares about him, and she really is interested in who he is, not what he can get her from the kitchen. And he begins to realize that some of the people he feels one way about, actually, it's unfair. It's an unfair representation of them, and he might need to give them a second look or a second chance. So I love Flick. The most challenging for me was probably Ned, because I'm a parent of teenagers and I wanted to be faithful to that experience, but also not use it as a therapy session either. So I had to pick and choose the battles within the novel. But I struggled with Ned because he's such a likable person, and it's hard to take someone who's so likable and write them as a flawed character still, and have them be empathetic and relatable at this time.
Yeah, that's always a struggle. I
Yeah.
feel like my writing group is always like, they're too nice. You need to add some grit to them, make
Yes.
them a little rougher around the edges.
Right. Give them some problems to solve it and some things that they need to fit.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And then you can show their growth.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, we love to root for an underdog. I think that's so important.
All right, one last question, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So you have quite a few books under your belt now, and we have some for sale tonight. I will not ask you to choose a favorite because I know that's like very hard to do as an author. But is there one that stands out to you either for being a challenge for you to write or having some kind of personal significance to you?
Yeah, I mean, they all do in their own way, to be honest. I think for me, my third adult fiction title, The Summer House, is one of my favorites. It takes place in Westerly, Rhode Island. It's a family reunion and Flossie, the grandmother, is there and she has the secret, which is not a spoiler. She has to sell the family summer house where they have had generations of family reunions and heartbreak and happiness and all of these memories with her kids and grandkids. I love that book so much, and I just love that family so much. I care so much about all those characters, and I do with all of mine. But when I really think nostalgically, like who would I want to go and spend time with, it always comes back to the Merrills.
Yeah. It's hard to leave them sometimes.
It
like, once
is.
you
It really
stop
is.
writing.
Yeah.
And once you stop reading a book, sometimes.
Yes.
that same feeling.
You pine for some of those people.
But imagine reading for, a week or two, however long it takes you to get through a book, like when we're writing a book. You might be in that world for a year or more, and
Exactly.
that's a long time to be with those characters.
It is. They become very real, very three-dimensional for sure.
Yeah. Right, so we open it up to.
Does anybody have any questions?
The summer house took place in Westerly and Mystic Summer took place in Mystic. Does this book take place in a real place or is it more fictional?
This is fictional. This kind of like Duxbury area, but a little bit more inland because they have a view of the Blue Hills, but they also have that coastal vibe. So this is one of two of my novels that is fictional. Yeah. But they're all New England. I always write New England setting. Yeah. Favorite places I grew up going to. Nice.
It makes such a great backdrop too.
It does. Yeah.
Anywhere in New England.
It does, especially during summer season. For beach read. Yeah. Does anybody else have any questions? You guys are easy. It's like a scary part. We're getting off too easy.
Do you have any more books that you're working on?
I do. So I have, this is actually exciting. My next book coming out with Emily Books next summer is called The Sandy Page Bookshop. And that is about a bookstore in Chatham, Massachusetts. Just where, yeah. So that is about a woman who her life has fallen apart. She's a publisher in Boston, and she was about to be married, and everything just vaporizes overnight. I don't want to give away why. And she comes home to Cape Cod, to Sandwich on the Cape because she has nowhere else to go. And there she doesn't know what she's going to do with her life. And she finds this ramshackle old boat shed where her father used to store the family's Boston whaler. And it's dilapidated, which is exactly how she is at this point. And she's like, you know what? I'm gonna renovate this. I'm gonna do a little mini bookstore. And it kind of evolves. She runs into a childhood friend and they work on this business together and they keep moving and it brings people into the old building. There's like a little vegetable stand area. There's a cafe. There's a bookstore. It becomes a hub of the community. And then the people she gets in there are very diverse who come in and work and bring it to life. And then everyone has their own story. So it really follows the staff of the bookshop. The one I'm like still plugging away at and I'm the most excited about is I'm working on my first historical fiction novel right now. And it's about the 1938 hurricane, the Great Hurricane that swept up the New England coast. And this one takes place in Watch Hill, Rhode Island, and it follows an Irish immigrant Catholic family whose father works in the granite quarries in town, and their daughter is the nanny to a summer family, the Boltons. And the Boltons live up near on Bluff Avenue. They have one of those houses, they're industry titans. And it follows most of the historic period, late 1930s. And it's the relationship that she has with this family and something that happens to her with one of the family members just on the crest of the hurricane. And then the hurricane comes and it has devastating consequences, not just for the town, but for this family. And she survives it, but what she has to survive from this family is so much greater than just surviving the hurricane. And then it fast forwards, I should say, it's juxtaposed with modern day and with the great grandchild who is this Saloniani's great granddaughter. She is now deceased, and what the family is grappling with, and a property and impacts all the generations with this very deep, dark family secret from the hurricane. Yeah, that's a lot of fun to write. I've been doing research for 2 years on that, and just the stories are
They are.
incredible. There's this one family that was on Fort Road. The Western has remarkable reporting from that era that you can look up and read online. And then this one family who they were home. It's heartbreaking. We talk about loading all the pets into the car and the first floor garage, and then it floods and the pets drown. And this mother's trying to herd the children to the first floor and the second floor, and the water's rising and rising. And the father's not home, and she's home with the housekeeper, and the neighbor comes over and climbs through a window. And eventually the roof is blown off. They're up in the attic, and they literally a piece of the roof which flips up out and it becomes almost like a boat, and they float across Narragansett Bay all the way out to Stonington, Connecticut. It's wild. Hit land, climb out, and one of the men hurts his foot climbing through a hayfield into an old barn. Was the only injury they had from this entire crazy storm experience. So just reading all of those accounts is just, it gives me chills. But I'm so careful. I want to do it right. And I want to make sure I honor the history of it and the people's experiences and the town's history with this tragic event. So I'm 2/3 of the way for that, and that I'm actually going to be pitching, hoping to find a home for in the next year. So we'll see. Yeah. Little segue. I'm happy to sign books for anybody. If you guys don't have any more questions.
More questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Emily. It was a great conversation. Again, if you haven't purchased your books yet, we have them available at the register. And if you'd like to get them signed, we'll have Hannah at the back table right here signing books for you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.